So today we'll be talking about moon in Aquarius in the 8th house. So what the moon signifies is it shows us what gives us comfort or security or just emotional stability. It rules the home life, the family, and also it has another meaning, which is the creative process, because the moon represents the womb, which is where a baby develops. And so in astrology, it just represents creative processes where things incubate or where things are created, especially before they are shared with the world. So there's like a private element to it or a work in progress type of element. And it shows us the resources we use in order to create and in order to do things. So, yeah. And when it's in the sign of Aquarius, which is the sign of fixed air, fixed means a constant state, and air means movement or detachment or interaction, and change. So fixed air means a constant state of change or a constant state of detachment in this case, because the moon is about attachment. And when it's in Aquarius, this indicates an emotional need for detachment. So there's like this security or this emotional stability that comes from being emotionally detached. And in this case, the moon is in the 8th house, which is the house of interpersonal forms of dependence or interpersonal resources, things that we share. And a lot of times it can show power struggles. It's also the house of death and transformation, debt, taxes, inheritance, just money and power over others and stuff. Generally speaking, with this placement, a very literal interpretation would be an emotional dependence on friends or community, because Aquarius also rules friend groups, networks, community. So if you have this placement, there may be an emotional dependence on those things, especially like friends that typically you can depend on or that have like resources. A lot of times you can rely on them for sufficiency or for like stability, even if it's like an emotional form of reliance rather than a material form. But there will be that type of energy in some way in a lot of cases. Another thing about moon in Aquarius in the 8th house is that when the moon is in the 8th house, it's in the 5th house from the 4th house. So there's an influence of 5th energy. And the reason that's important is because the moon rules the 4th house. So it's important to count that number. And the 5th house is about our ego. It's about our value to others, validation, and giving value to others or giving of oneself to others. And when the moon is in the 8th house in Aquarius and it has that 5th influence, there could be emotional detachment for the sake of sacrificing oneself for the needs of others, or giving of oneself, or like an emotional detachment in sex, even because the 8th house rules sex. And there's like this 5th influence, which indicates there is an element of validation that is being sought out by the individual that has this placement. Generally speaking, this is a highly seductive or sexual placement, because those that have this house, this 8th house in Aquarius, most of you guys are Cancer risings. But generally speaking, this is the natural 8th house for Cancer. And so this would indicate the chart ruler being in the 8th house, because the moon rules Cancer. So that's your chart ruler for a lot of you guys. So a lot of times there's this emotional detachment, and it's because you rely on yourself or you feel like you can't depend on anyone else. So that's important to note as well. That's another possibility. Now, if you don't have that specific way of expressing things, like another way is there's this emotional need for validation, especially like sexual validation when the moon is in the 8th house in Aquarius. And just when the moon is in the 8th house in general. But generally speaking, like if it's not sexual, you have this need for others to depend on your energy. You have this desire to have power over others in some way and have this persuasive ability or this like seductive pull about yourself and about your energy, especially when it comes to your charisma or your personality or like your vitality, like the energy that you radiate. You want it to be something that people depend on and that you can like leverage against others. So in addition, with the moon being Aquarius, this indicates that you need to reach a state of emotional detachment in order to receive that validation or that power or that ego that you need in order to feel secure. So this is a pretty shadowy placement. At the high expression of this placement, it can mean somebody that needs to be emotionally detached in order to go through transformative moments and in order to upgrade themselves or acquire new experiences, acquire new knowledge. But generally speaking, the moon feels very damaged or like deeply buried and suppressed when it's in the 8th house, and especially when it's in Aquarius, which is a sign that it doesn't feel very comfortable in. In fact, Aquarius is the 8th sign from Cancer, which is the sign that the moon is comfortable in. So again, there's another influence of 8 energy. So it's like double 8th house energy. And a lot of you guys know that the moon is debilitated in the 8th house traditionally in astrology. So yeah, but this placement can show living in your ego. It can show needing interpersonal relationships and exchange in order to feel validated or in order to even sustain yourself. Like, and all of this is acquired through having power over your emotions and having power and the ability to suppress what you're feeling. And a lot of times even suppress like your actions and hide your motives and stuff in order to acquire what it is that you need to feel secure, whether that's emotionally or literally in the physical world. So anyways, that is the moon in Aquarius in the 8th house. Hopefully that was insightful in some way. If you enjoyed, please don't forget to like this video, share it with somebody that has this placement if you know one, and of course subscribe to the channel. Other than that, if you want a natal chart reading, I'm doing those at the moment, and the link and the information for the link is in the description as well. And other than that, I appreciate you guys watching, and I will see you guys in another video. Peace.